that. I love it when I figure that stuff out. All right. Well, we're up to close to 40 people on the call. So thank you everyone for joining us. We have a very, very, very special guest tonight, the one and only Bill Brodhead. And Bill Brodhead knows, probably more about radon mitigation than any human being you could find on the planet. He's been doing this for a while, and not only has he been doing it for a while, he does it in Pennsylvania, as well as all over the world, because he goes to Guam and other exciting places. But he lives in Pennsylvania and gets to deal with some really record high radon concentrations there. And Bill hasn't been practicing, testing and mitigation in a professional sense in a little while. I don't think he's been concentrating on research here in the last few years, and does a lot of research. We're very proud to say that he uses Ecosense products for his research and data collection activities and assessments. So we're really proud to have him here. Thank you, Bill, for joining us. We have people that are professional radon testers and mitigators on the call, and we also noticed during the review of the registrations that we have some homeowners. So we've got a mix of people from all backgrounds that some have entered some questions that we'll try to get to as we move forward. So let's go ahead and get rolling. I'm going to just give you a quick introduction, and then we'll turn things over to Mr. Brodhead. I can figure out how to get my slides to advance. So Ecosense was started in 2019, and our CEO, Insoo Park, actually founded the company because he has a mutual friend who's working, or who's actually the professor who developed the radon sensor at FT Lab, who manufactures all our devices and is a major shareholder in Ecosense. Our devices were developed and manufactured in Korea. The reason I'm here, by the way, is because after retiring from a position as executive director at AARST and NRPP, I was looking around, and I talked to Mr. Park, our CEO, and I have to tell you, the radon detector technology in the Ecosense products is something that's always really, really impressed me. And so when given an opportunity to join and be a part of it, I decided, yeah, this is where I need to be for the next few years. So I'm vice president and a shareholder in the company, and so we'd like to share a little bit about some of the things we do, and Bill's going to talk to you about how he uses our products, as well as give you some good information on as he answers all your questions. So we have a whole lineup of detectors, and including the Radon Eye Pro, which is our monitor for doing professional testing, and it's set up to provide a report that complies with the ANSI Standards. It has our amazing 30 count per hour per picocurie per liter detector efficiency, which is unrivaled in the radon industry for monitors that are used for professional testing, and unless you want to spend about $8,000, and that's usually more for research. And then we have these other devices that are used some by professionals, but they're primarily aimed toward homeowners. So the EcoCube and the Radon Eye have that same amazing sensor inside. The EcoBlue is a fairly new device, and it has a little different sensor in it, but still has a very, very impressive 18 counts per hour per picocurie per liter detector efficiency. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go through and discuss detectors, and I'm sure Bill will bring up that a little bit as he talks about why he uses our devices and the kind of data. So we've got a pretty impressive list of questions here. So I don't want to delay moving forward. So Bill, why don't you share a little bit about your experience with our devices and the ones you use most often, and some stories on how they've helped you in your both in your mitigation endeavors, but in your research.
Thanks, Dallas. That was a great introduction. Yeah, I received a radon eye when they first came out, the consumer version. Oh, we're talking about, I don't know, 8 years ago or so, and I immediately put it through. I have a little radon chamber that I run, and put it through its paces, and was immediately impressed by it. And one thing I was impressed about was how quickly it responds to radon, to changes in radon levels. That in the first unit, it responds within 10 minutes, gives you your first reading and such not. And that reading is not too far off, maybe 70% of the actual reading. I mean, normally we wait 3 hours for a reading and such not to get an accurate reading, although some monitors will pick up within an hour or so. So I immediately recognized, wow, this instrument may have some real applications for my use. I don't do radon measurements. I'm not out measuring people's homes on a regular basis. I don't have a measurement. I never had a measurement business. I did use EPERMs for a long time, and I still have an EPERM set up and use those quite a bit. But my primary focus, of course, was mitigation, and my company over the 30 years we're in business did about 8,000 jobs. And of course, we always ran into some problem houses. And it always seemed that if you ran into one problem house, there was another one that was going to show up on the phone within a day or two. And then I turned into 3. And the thing that I always also recognize with problem houses when you're a radon mitigator is that it's when you get a problem house, it often is a real sticker that you don't fix it with one return. You know, radon's invisible. You know, I mean, and trying to track down, you know, what did I miss the first time, and how do I get to it? And I've owned sniffers. I've had the radon away sniffer, and I've had pylons for years. And the pylon's a great instrument. I really enjoyed using it, but it's a touchy instrument. It's also fragile, and can be a problem, but it can measure very high levels. And I recognized right away, wow, this instrument has the potential to maybe help me in my mitigation, because the base unit was low cost, and the efficiency and the ability to get a result fairly quickly, even if it's not a dead accurate result in the first 20 minutes or so of measurements or so. So I immediately got a hold of FTP Lab, and I started working with them. They started sending me instruments. I started testing them. I was testing them for their sensitivity and their response time, and also for thoron. They are sensitive to thoron. That's one issue I want to point out right away. If you by chance have some thoron source, especially if you're trying to do measurements that are really close to the soil in an infiltration base, not necessarily fluxing through the concrete, but if there's thoron in the concrete, or if there's dirt or something where you're trying to get measurement, you do have to be a little careful. The instruments obtain their radon from the bottom of the unit, and you tend to put them right over something, so you have to be a little careful that way. So because of that work over the years, and I worked with, when INSU took over as a salesperson here, I started working with INSU and carrying on my relationship as he built his products. And I convinced him, hey, you really need to develop another instrument specifically for radon mitigators to help track down problem houses. And that's where we developed the Eco-Tracker. And the difference on the Eco-Tracker is the other units record measurements hourly. So you get an hour, you do get a display, And I would use that and I would place these instruments around the house. But I have to run around the house, getting the display, trying to write down the numbers and such. And I said, if you could just set up that software on the Eco Tracker so that it records 5-minute intervals, 10-minute intervals, and hourly intervals, okay, this instrument could be really handy for problem jobs, okay? Because you get to a problem job and you don't know if it's a floor drain, is it the crawl space, is it the rim joist, is it a pipe that's going through to the well, where's the radon? And normally you have your, what been used is the sniffers to go around and sniff these locations, but it takes time to do all those measurements. And there's background counts you pick up with everyone. And when you pick up the background counts and you move from one location to the next location, you're carrying those background counts with you, and that may confuse you. And often you're looking for subtle differences. I mean, 6 picocuries in one spot and 3 picocuries in another. You try and use a sniffer to tell the difference between 6 picocuries and 3 picocuries, and it's difficult, okay, because of the variation. Dallas, how much variation you get in radon counts. And so for those kind of situations, it's really, really tough to get it sensitive. Now you take a sniffer and you sniff something, it's 30 picocuries, it's got a lot of counts, or certainly when it goes up to 100, no problem, your sniffer will boom, go off scale. And so that's where those other instruments could be handy. But at the same time, if we had the Eco Tracker and it's capable of picking those up and doing multiple measurements at the same time. And so the development of that was really great as an instrument that I think is really handy for a mitigator, every mitigator to have, because you get a house that's a problem house. And now you can walk out, you can go into the house, arrive. And of course, the first thing with any problem house is, do you have vacuum underneath the floor? And I just can't pound it into radon mitigators. They need a micromanometer. And now the new guidance on our ANSI, our AARST guidance is going to require you have to make a pressure field extension measurements. And we're getting some complaints. Oh, it's too much work. No, it's a key component of understanding, did you fix the house? And we know we're fixing the house by reversing air pressures. Okay, that we're not putting our hand, we're not stopping radon with paints and caulks. No, we're trying to reverse pressure. And so if you put in a system and walk away, did you reverse the air pressure? And will the air pressure reversal that you've produced, will it withstand a stack effect that night when the house is working against the outdoor temperatures, or maybe that's this coming winter as we have cold temperatures and working in stacks. So it's always a battle between the house, the suction of the house versus suction underneath the floor. So this does not rule out using that. I have taken Eco Trackers and moved them around the basement and tried to put them in different corners to see where it is. And the issue is radon disperses really rapidly. And you can have a pipe and a wall that's connected to a well that you didn't bother to seal, and radon can be flooding out of that pipe, and you'd be surprised how quickly the radon dissipates from that location, that literally you put a radon monitor on one side of the basement and one on the other side, and you don't see much difference. Or if you do, it's such a small amount. So because it disperses fast, knowing small differences in the radon concentration is really important. And that's where sniffers have a hard time determining small differences, the standard radon sniffers. So now, once we've gone in and determined that, oh, we have vacuum underneath the floor, therefore, we should not have an issue. Sometimes there still is an issue. You get what's called, the flux coming through, and it can be other things, or maybe there's a floor drain that you've got vacuum under the floor, but the floor drain actually runs out to septic tank that it's not being used, and now radon's backing up. I mean, there can be sources on the floor, but once you eliminate that floor, then it's like, okay, where's the villain? Where's it coming from? Is it the crawl space? Is it the garage? Is it the front entrance? Is it a pipe? Is it the electrical panel? I mean, I've had chased down for weeks trying to find something, and I've just missed the conduit from electrical panel that came in and was bleeding radon back into the basement through this one conduit. And I just never put my sniffer up there to catch that. So having these instruments, you could then go around, spread them around the basement, okay? And in 10 minutes, 13, well, you could set it even at 5-minute intervals with this, and it takes 3 minutes for it to warm up, and then the 5 minutes that it runs, and suddenly you've got readings all the way around the basement. And the readings can be 4.1, 4.8, 4 point this, and then one of them reads 5 or 6, and it's like, okay, let's let that one go a little longer and see if we get, and know that as it maybe then it levels out with the rest of them, or no, we don't. And then in another 20 minutes or so, move them to another location. So within an hour, where you were sniffing with an hour and only getting 1 or 2, now you can take your 4, get 4 measurements, and then switch them out and get eight different locations done. And things will catch it. I mean, I've had a house where we were remediating and everything seemed fine. And then I was like, well, let's stick a monitor up in the garage. And the homeowner was driving in and out of the garage. And the garage was 100 picocuries, even though he was opening the garage door and closing it again. And that 100 picocuries was bleeding in. I was like, oh my goodness, I need to treat this garage. So the awesome thing is the fast response time that you get from the instruments. And of course, this plays over with the instruments being the accuracy of the instruments too, and the improvement of that when you're looking at results. In my research projects, this becomes really critical to see differences, especially when I'm trying to see changes in radon levels. And having one research project, I had a mitigator who was also a measurement person come and it put instruments into a house to pre-measure. I needed a baseline reading, and then I was going to pump air into the house and try and use a ventilation. And he was using a femtotech unit, an older femtotech unit, and it was just up and down, and because it just didn't have the resolution, especially when you're looking at 4 to 6 picocuries or so, and those kind of levels and such not. Yep. So my experience has been the Eco Tracker's been great. The Eco Cube, initially I thought, is that really a worthwhile instrument to have? But that's turned out to be absolutely great if you can tie into someone's Wi-Fi. The downside is you have to go into the Wi-Fi to get it, but the Eco Cube just provides great data, super convenient data. And that's true with both the Radon Eye, the Eco Cube, the Radon Tracker, the Radon Eye Pro. All of those, you can easily download the data. And I like to download it. It comes through as a text file, but that text file can go right into an Excel spreadsheet. And then from that point, you can, and if it's got a time clock built into it, like the Radon Eye Pro, that's awesome. The Eco Cube has a time clock built in. So that offers a lot. Eco Cube won't work well for doing radon, trying to determine a source, but it's great for a follow-up measurement if you can use it, because you can leave it in someone's house and then you don't even have to go back to the house if someone's willing to turn over a Wi-Fi connection to you. So I have it at one of my research projects. I have an Eco Cube on the first floor, second floor, basement, and one outdoors. And that's the other area I've found is that these instruments have enough sensitivity that I can actually place one outdoors. I put it into my favorite thing is just put it inside a plastic mailbox and leave it outdoors on a chair or someplace so it's not on the ground. And I'm getting outdoor measurements, and it is amazing to see the variation you get in outdoor measurements just about anywhere. And you'll see the levels go to 1 picocurie in just about anywhere at certain times during the day, or certain times at night when there's no wind blowing at all. And in this case, we're using a research project where we have these super high houses and we're getting very elevated readings and such not. So it's an awesome instrument. One of the downsides is it does need to be plugged in. And so when I'm using the Eco Tracker, I use some backup battery. I use these small cell phone batteries. I like the ones that are a little bit bigger than the small ones, the ones that have like 20,000 milliamp hours, and use a converter plug that converts it from the 5 volts that the battery is to the 12 volts. And sometimes you have little issues with the cable on those. I've had to buy different cables to find one that consistently works, but that's handy. And if you have one of the larger size batteries, you can run them for a couple days on battery. So that's handy.
Yeah, we have a battery that we recommend that you can purchase on Amazon that runs right at $40, and it'll run it for 2.5, 3 days.
Right.
If you need to do that, and the Radon I Pro, for example, comes with a little pouch that you can put the battery in and so forth. The reason the sensor needs a battery is because it's an ion chamber, and so it takes a little power, which is why we get the counting statistics that we get. So I took the liberty because we're talking about what makes all this possible. If it weren't for the detector sensitivity or counting efficiency, I like to call it, then we wouldn't be able to do all the things that Bill's talking about. And let me share this with you. Bill is indeed responsible with other people as well that said, hey, we've got these radon eyes. Can you change these a little bit where we can use them for doing the type of tracking that the Eco Tracker does that Bill was describing? So listening to the people like you in the field who have ideas is an important part of our business. We want to hear your feedback, your ideas, because this is a perfect example of something that we were able to initiate and implement because Bill and others said, hey, if you could just modify the firmware where you could read at 5-minute or 10-minute intervals in addition to an hour and be able to read multiple units on one app, then this would be perfect for the kind of data that we need to collect. So this is just an idea. This is for a 1 hour reading, and keep in mind that gathering data for 1 hour and having confidence in your number, you've got to have a pretty good detector efficiency to be able to do that. And so you can see that even after an hour that we're within plus or minus 18%. That's just within an hour's time of data collection. If you look at that for 48 hours, then we're within 2.7%. So if we're reporting, this is at 4 picocuries per liter. So if we're at a 4 picocurie per liter radon concentration, then you can have really, really good confidence in the reading that's being reported because of that detector efficiency. If you take say a 1028, which is only getting 2.7 counts per hour per picocurie per liter, then you can see that you just don't gather enough counts in an hour's time to have any confidence in that number. So think about it. The real estate protocol says that if you're going to test with a continuous monitor, it should have the ability to record concentrations at 1 hour intervals. But if you have no confidence in those interval readings, then really what good are they? So you can see that the counting error here is 66% on a 1 hour reading. Now, Now, when you get to 48 hours, you can see, okay, you're okay. You're at a 95% confidence level. You can be assured that a 4 picocurie per liter reading is between 3.6 and 4.4. All right, so you can live with that. It's not as great as ours, but that's okay. But if you're going to be reporting 1 hour readings, then our philosophy is they should be good, reliable readings. I'll give you another example of another unit out there that gets 3.7 counts per hour per picocurie per liter at a 4 picocurie per liter concentration. Then it's going to be within plus or minus 54%. So it's a little better than the previous one. And to its credit, once you get to 48 hours, you can see that, that the number is a lot more reliable. But our philosophy is if you're going to report 1 hour readings, then you should have confidence in those readings. And when you're doing diagnostic work, like Bill's been talking about, then having that quick response with numbers that you can have confidence in is really, really important. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up as a clarification before we go any further.
Yeah, it's almost embarrassing to give a report to a customer with the hourly results graphed, and the hourly results are oh, okay, it averaged 4, went up to 7, it went down to 2, went up to 8, went down to 3, but you average it was 3.8.
Yeah, exactly. Let me give you an example here. If you can see the slide right here. Whoop. Well, I can get back up here. So this is a radon eye, which has that same sensor as the radon eye Pro and the same sensor in the EcoCube, 30 count per hour per picocurie per liter, running against an alpha guard. Now, an alpha guard, for those of you who don't know, is an instrument that is used to intercompare radon chambers. So there's a whole program where the secondary radon chambers pass alpha guards from one chamber to the next and you can see how and this instrument is like $10,000. Okay, so it's 100 counts per hour per picocurie per liter, but you can see here in this graph how well the Ecosense detector will track right along with that. And the key to that is this detector, and it's an ion chamber. And having been at this for a long time and been a part of a company that manufactured ion chambers back in the 90s, and I can fully appreciate how awesome this detector is, which is why I'm a part of the company. So I just want to keep stressing that what you're getting is a superior sensor and for less money. That's what blew me away when I first saw the technology. So I'm seeing we're at 7:30, and let me go over a couple other things. I guess I went through the counting errors here, and we talked about that. We also have the Radon Eye Pro. The Radon Eye Pro comes with software where you can create a report that complies with the ANSI standard. All the things that are required on the report are there for you to input and easily as you conduct or create your report. You get a dashboard and you get the smartphone app, so you will communicate with the device out in the field with your smartphone app, but you have a dashboard where you can set up your templates and all your report formats, put your customize them the way you need them with your logo, and keep track of all your reports and so forth. So and we don't charge you extra for the software. We don't charge you extra for the carrying case. All that comes with it. So for less money, you get everything included, and you get that superior detector that I've been talking about so much. So let me we'll get to some other things here. I'll come back to that. So let me stop the sharing here and see if we can get to some questions. So I have one from Elliot Wall, who says, am I able to get radon levels from a monitor that is connected to the homeowner's Wi-Fi? So help me out there, Bill. What's the answer to that question?
If he gives you access to it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm not clear myself. I mean, well, with the Eco Cube at the homeowners, both he and I have access to the same data.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
anytime I can pull right now, I can pull it up. The house is in Pennsylvania. I can tell you how much radon, what the radon levels are in the basement, first floor, second floor.
Yeah, and a homeowner can share their app with a mitigator. There's no problem there, or vice versa. Yeah, the Radon I Pro also has Wi-Fi capability. So if you do set it up on the client's Wi-Fi, then you can do that as well. Otherwise, you just communicate with it with your Bluetooth and collect the data when you retrieve it. Let's see. So this is one right up your alley. Concrete slab, dense clay soil, pre-existing fans. Can a fan be installed under the slab to avoid more holes, pipes, and so forth?
I think he must be referring to installing the pipe from the outside directly into the slab or into the sub slab rather than there. I mean, certainly what's happening now is people thought, oh, I don't have a basement, I don't have radon. But we all know there's 3 reasons for radon, and that's location, location, location. Every house is heated. Every house has stack effect. Every house has holes through the concrete. Every house has a potential. Obviously, a house that's built with a basement and then one that's next door has a slab, the basement's going to be more likely to have high radon levels than the slab. But when you're doing a slab on grade, and often these houses are completely finished, there's no place, maybe the garage you can get through and get such. So we're punching from the outside and going in, and we certainly do that. The issues with that is, one, the block wall. If it's a block wall house, it can be very leaky in the block wall. You don't want to suck air from the block wall. You want to suck from underneath. The permeability under the slab is always the issue. If you're going to punch from one spot on the outside, how far are you going to go? And what we call pressure field extension is always based on 2 things. It's the permeability that's underneath the slab and leakage. Okay. And leakage is cracks, leakage is the soil itself, leakage is the block. If you have the more leakage you have, the harder it is to get that pressure field. So that's why we talk so much about caulking and sealing, which you can't do on slab on grade. And there's some other tricky things with it. Is, you've got your power source, you've got to have some gauge. You need an outdoor mounted gauge and such not. But we've done lots of slab on grades where we punch from the outside.
Yeah. Thank you. So I've got one from Daniel Yang, who says he has high levels despite good communication. I assume on a job he's working on. It's a slab on grade, no basement. Give him a hint.
And that is slab on grade, no basement.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, radon can be so tricky. I had a guy call me out on a basement he couldn't fix, and I'll talk about a basement first. But he kept adding more pipes underneath, and I went and I checked the vacuum under the floor. He had tremendous vacuum under the floor. So then we started walking around the house, and when you walked around, you know how you have a bay window that sometimes cantilevers out? Well, this bay window not only cantilevered out, but had skirting all the way to the ground. And literally, what was happening was radon was coming from underneath the skirting coming into the space. Okay, so you get funny pathways that happen. Now, if he's talking about a slab on grade, then the issue is, does he have vacuum under the entire slab? They might say they have, maybe they do, but we always drill test holes on the corners, and unfortunately with slab on grade, a lot of it's finished. And so now you're limited where you can put test holes. They can be very small. It can be a 1/4 inch drill bit. You can we drill between grout joints in a tile floor sometimes to get it. You're always concerned about hitting something or steel that's in there. It's going to affect you. But what I would suggest is he needs to first go back and really determine, does he have negative pressure under that floor? If he's got negative pressure under the entire floor, then, and it's slab on grade, maybe it's the garage, you know? And it's not only the garage, it's any concrete around the outside of the house is trapping radon. And that trapped radon will move towards negative pressure. In other words, especially mostly in basement situations, you have a garage and you think, well, the radon really doesn't want to come into the garage. It wants to go sideways into the basement because that's where the negative pressure is. So
Well,
it's always a pressure thing.
Yeah,
And there, and let me point out one quick thing too, is that when we're talking about pressure, the other issue is what's the air handlers doing?
Yeah.
In other words, if you have an air handler in that house, now in a modern house, we'd expect everything to be above the slab, but some older houses have openings on the negative side of the air handler. And which can be, it's basically, if you have a negative, if you have a return pipe anywhere close to the dirt underneath, somehow making connection through the slab, then you already have a radon system. It's just your radon system is the air handler and it's venting into the bedrooms. No. So anyway, David, could be tricky.
David, did you need to bring up something?
Yeah, so we have some questions here in the chat directed towards Bill and mitigation. So maybe we can go through some of those.
Why don't you take a couple and then I've got some more. So I've got a whole list. So plenty of questions for Bill. We may have to run over a little bit tonight.
All right. So to start, we have Charlie asking about your study with eco trackers and working with ground level venting of mitigation systems.
Oh, all right. Okay. So you know, the Canadians don't vent above the roof, and they vent right at grade. Okay, and the Europeans vent right at grade. So I did a study 3 years ago where I exhausted my personal radon system at my own house. I exhausted it at grade. And what I did was I used eco trackers, 1 meter in front of it, 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters from the exhaust pipe. And at 45-degree angles, I set one at 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters at a 45-degree angle. Okay. And I ran the exhaust pipe under different scenarios. I ran it under high airflow, low airflow, a 4-inch pipe, a 3-inch pipe. And I also measured my outdoor levels. And I discovered that there was almost no radon exhausted on the, I shouldn't say no, that at 45-degree angle from the exhaust pipe, there was very low radon buildup. Obviously, there was a high buildup at 1 meter, but by 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters, it dissipated almost to background levels and such not. The other thing that I had was I had a eco trackers. We use eco trackers using radon eyes right against the building to determine if radon was getting back to the building and going back in. And we had almost no measurable radon back at the building. In other words, if you exhaust straight out, then it's almost a complete non-issue for re-entrainment back into the building. So the Canadian method, the European method seems perfectly practical. And part of the study was looking at, well, where did we get this concept of venting up to the roof? And it happened because of some initial research done by the EPA way back in the 90s, where they were exhausting right beside the house. They weren't directing the exhaust away. They were just exhausting the exhaust actually sideways to the house. And it was actually causing re-entrainment. So
very
there
cool.
you go.
Yeah. So that's a topic that will continue to be discussed.
Yes.
So, yes.
And controversial.
Yeah, there's some controversy, there are different opinions, and you know, it will continue to be looked at, and over time we'll see how it goes. But it's interesting, and Bill certainly is on the edge of research that's looking at all that. You have another one, David?
I have a ton more, but the next one is, we have a question saying basically EcoCube was excellent in showing that levels remain high in low temperatures between 0 degrees to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The house is done on concrete slab over dense clay soil and has 2 fans already. Do you have any experience with stacking fans to avoid more systems in the living room? Or is it possible to install a fan under the concrete slab?
Okay, so dense soil sounds like poor pressure field extension.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of mitigators will go, oh, I don't have enough pressure field extension, so therefore let's double the fan. We'll put 2 fans on top, or we'll take
That's
this fan
thinking
out.
American, Bill. More
Yeah,
horsepower,
very
right?
American. More horsepower. They put a bigger fan in.
Yeah.
And what you have to understand is that with a pressure field, the extension on it, if you double the vacuum, you don't double the extension of the pressure field, okay? And pressure fields are extending out and down, okay? The better way to think about it is that if at the edge of your pressure field, you have 1/1000th of 1 inch of negative pressure, very, very slight negative pressure, like 1/10 of a Pascal. You can just read it with your 1/10 of a Pascal, your $1,000 micromanometer, okay? And now you change the fan from a fan that was producing 2 inches of vacuum to a fan that's producing 4 inches of vacuum, okay? What we found is that it's a linear increase, and that 1/10 of a Pascal will now become 2/10 of a Pascal, okay? And then 1/1000th will be 2/1000th. Well, now that you have 2/10 of a Pascal, guess what? You've extended the pressure field another foot, okay? So doubling the fan may only give you another foot or 2 of pressure. Now, if you could take the fan and go from 2 inches to 20 inches and get 10 times the vacuum change, okay, now we're talking some serious horsepower. So almost always the better approach is more suction pits, okay? And it may require putting a fan in another location, okay? But the important part in there would be trying to measure the pressure field. Where does it go and where does it end? How big is what we call the ROI, the radius of influence? And that radius of influence, if it's 10 feet, okay, from that suction point, then you almost have to think, okay, every 20 feet, I have to have a suction point in this space because I'm going 10 feet and 10. Now, any pressure, if you put pressure at 2 different locations, then wherever they meet, it'll double that reading. In other words, it's additive kind of thing. But so much of mitigation is changing pressures. So if you're not getting it on a slab on grade, unless it's another source, something you didn't count on, the garage, the pipe, something else.
So thank you, Bill. Before you get to your next question, David, I have one from Pam Brown. So she's asking, what else can you do to help decrease the radon if you already have a mitigation pipe installed?
Probably better caulking. You can almost always go around and do better sealing. And it's interesting, if you have a lot of mitigators will only put the pipe in and the fan, and they don't bother to do much caulking, maybe a little bit next to the next thing. When we measure the pressure field underneath the floor and we get 1 Pascal in the far corner, when we caulk the edge, it goes 10 times higher as a rule. You'll go from 1 Pascal to 10 Pascals, okay? So if she wants to further reduce it, then sealing up any cracks, okay, is an excellent way to increase the performance of that negative pressure that's underneath the floor. Other than that, there is a possibility that, increasing the size of the fan might give you a better reduction, or it just may turn out that you're getting a small amount of radon coming from the block wall, or you're getting a small amount of radon that's fluxing through the concrete. And so that's a ventilation issue in order to reduce that, unless you go, and we found that to stop radon from coming through concrete, you basically need a 2-part epoxy to be an effective seal on radon. Radon just is, it's an atom.
Yeah,
People
and-
don't really, they don't
That
really,
doesn't deal
they
with the
don't get it.
cracks. And-
Yeah,
and
just
hopefully-
like we don't get the $1 trillion debt. We just
Yeah.
like it doesn't, that doesn't
Yeah.
really compute very well in our brain. We don't get the concept of how small an atom is.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And Pam, I can say from my experience as well that the oftentimes mitigators don't do as good a job sealing as they should. And it's not because the sealing is going to keep the radon out. It's because the sealing helps that pressure field extension. If you're sucking air from the house down with your suction pipe, then you're rotating air and you're not creating as much suction underneath the house. So you want to draw that air as much as possible from below the slab, not from the house itself. Unfortunately,
Yeah, and
some
I'll make
mitigators
one
don't-
other,
don't do as good a job of that as others. Yes.
yeah,
Go ahead,
and I'll
Bill.
make another point about that, Dallas, too, and that if you have very permeable, if you have gravel underneath the floor, you can sometimes get away without sealing.
Yeah.
But when you have non-permeable or no stone base underneath it, the amount of air going up your U-tube is going like whoop, that's hardly moving any air. It's at max vacuum. Okay, how much air is it moving? Oh, it's moving a tiny amount. Well, guess what? That tiny amount of air can be supplied by small cracks. And so small cracks suddenly become an issue, a bigger issue when the permeability is very low underneath the floor.
So I think that answers also Jibby Williams' question about what other ways can you lower radon even if you add the mitigation system. Making the mitigation system work more effectively is probably item number one. If you do get to a point where you've just, the mitigator's done everything that they can, then, perhaps some additional ventilation, if the house needs it, can help. I remember the solution to pollution is dilution, but remember that you have to double that ventilation in order to cut the radon concentrations that you have currently in half. So that's why it's not a very effective mitigation approach on its own. But if you're just trying to make some small adjustments to get a little extra, then sometimes that maybe an air-to-air heat exchanger, heat recovery ventilator type thing, could help. But I agree with Bill and he certainly knows better than I, but tightening up that mitigation system to extend your pressure field extension is probably the first step. I have one from Jose Luis Jimenez. Oh, welcome. So Dr. Jimenez is a professor at a university in Colorado. And so thanks for joining us. He says, what should you expect for pressure field extension with membrane mitigation systems? So when you're doing a sub-slab mitigation system with a membrane where you're depressurizing underneath.
Well, membranes can be trickier to seal. And typically we're talking about a crawl space situation where you're laying a membrane on top of dirt, okay? And the critical thing there is how tight can you seal the membrane, especially on the edge? Can you use a plastic bar and then gun it into the wall, use Tapcon somehow mechanically attach to the wall, then caulk and seal that? Is your tape holding well on all your seams? We found that we can often get a vacuum under a membrane from one location for something as big as 1,000 square feet if the membrane's sealed really well. So it's possible to get a complete vacuum. We've also had situations where people started piling luggage and pieces of their household items and stuff around our suction point on the membrane. And what literally happened was the parts surrounding that suddenly were not being influenced by the vacuum of the fan, and the membrane rose up. Okay, it was actually being puffed up by the stack effect of the house. In other words, at that point, the house is winning the battle, and it's pulling radon out of that source and such not. So if we can get a couple of pascals of negative pressure under the membrane, we're usually happy, because it's hard to get 100 pascals like you would under concrete, such not. Of course, any reversal, any negative pressure will reverse the flow. And so, but the question is, will you be able to maintain that negative pressure underneath there? So it's just a tougher situation when you're sealing large spaces. And that's why we often will use, for bigger jobs, we use fabrics, those Brillo pad kind of fabrics that you can put underneath the membrane and then attach your suction point to that so that it can move out through those fabrics, or perforated pipe that you run underneath to try and extend the pressure field from a single location underneath the membrane there. But and once again, it's sealing's the real issue.
So I have one more that I want to do, and then I'll turn it back over to you, David. Sorry, this one I do want to take. It's from Mike Gordon. He says, will radon levels return after years of mitigation? For example, after I turn off the evacuation pump? And my answer to that is radon gas is produced from the decay of radium. And radium has a 1,620-year half-life. So without getting into a full explanation of all that, just consider it a perpetual generator of more radon. So it's not going to go away. We're not evacuating it until it's depleted and gone. We're actually creating that pressure difference that Bill's been describing for 45 minutes now, that reverses the airflow between the house and the soil, where we're not drawing it in, but any leakage that we can't get to seal, the air is going from the house down. So if you turn off the radon fan, then there will be plenty of radon there to come back in, as it did before you install the mitigation system. That's why it's important that you monitor mitigation systems continuously and make sure that it's working. Something I want to put a plug in for all of you who are listening, including your professionals. You can do a post-mitigation clearance test for a couple of days in the spring or the fall when the weather's mild and everything looks wonderful, like you did a great job. But if you didn't extend that pressure field to the degree that you need to, then here comes winter when the furnace is running, or summer when the air conditioning is running, whatever it is, and the pressure differences between the house and the soil are going to overcome that mitigation system. So if you don't have a way to monitor that mitigation ongoingly in real time, then you are just assuming that everything is fine, when in actuality it may not be. Okay, David, you're next.
All right. Well, so we have 4 questions left. One of them is for Bill directly. Bill, have you used any of our devices, for example, like the EcoTracker, for testing radon in water? If so, how was it done and how accurate were the results?
That's been a pet project of mine for the last couple months. Okay. And I rigged up I bought 2 glass bottles and with lids on the top, and I did rubber boots. First I tried rubber boots to seal, and once again, the sealing was really difficult. And then I found, just use electrical tape and just run tape around these 2. So I ran these 2 bottles. One of them had the EcoTracker inside of it, okay, which you can read right through the glass because it's Bluetooth there. And I ran a cord through it, so that was sealed in there, and then 2 orifices. And then the second one also had 2 orifices on it. And so what I would do, and they had little valves to adjust, and we would inject 100 cc's of water into the smaller vial, shake it till release the radon that was in there. Now we have a vial that's got radon in it, and the radon's from the water, okay? Then we take that vial, we shake it, okay? And then I had a small little air pump built into the vial here, or actually maybe the air pump was in with the eco tracker. The air pump now would push air into the water, bubble the water, and the air would return, and pretty soon the radon that was in the smaller jar was in both jars, okay? And then the eco trackers were quickly telling me what the radon concentration was. And I think my ratio with 100 milliliter samples was about, as I remember, about 65. In other words, whatever the eco tracker read, it was like 65 times higher on there for the radon concentration in the water. So I think as possible, I've even talked to them about developing something to use it for water. But something simpler where you just want to know, do I or don't I have radon in the water? Probably the best thing to do is just go into the bathroom, put your eco tracker in the bathroom, close the door, turn on the shower, flush the toilet, keep the door closed, let it run for 20 minutes and see if you get a rise in the radon levels, okay? Now, I've not tried to calibrate how much that is, because it's going to be based on the volume in the room and the such not. But if you see hardly any change, you don't have much radon. If you start to see change, you're going, okay, on there.
Sometimes
maybe you can think of some other creative ways to get a rough idea of like, do I or do I not have some issue with radon in water?
Yeah, so sometimes a quantitative approach is the best way to go, but other times, as you just alluded to, a qualitative approach works just fine. You can tell whether the radon in the well water is contributing enough to the air by doing something practical. You may not know exactly, what's the concentration in the water, but it's enough to impact the air concentration, and you need to address it.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Very good.
No.
Okay.
All right, next one.
Next question is, will a mitigation system work if the outside radon level is high, around 10 picocuries per liter?
Good question.
Have you ever run into that, Bill?
That was exactly the situation we have in this development, where the radon levels outdoors would climb up to 10, 15, 20 picocuries at times, okay? And what we found was it took a couple hours for that radon outdoors to work its way into the house. And then it takes a little bit of time for it to work back out of the house. So even in my own house in Pennsylvania, where I have, with my radon system off, I run between 15 and 30 picocuries in my basement. So it's not an exorbitantly high level, but my outdoor levels will go to 1 picocurie at night on a regular basis, and will often go to 2 picocuries and even as high as 3 on a rare occasion and stuff. So I'm getting 2 picocuries outdoors, and I can say when I measure indoors that yes, I'm getting a little bit coming back into my house and affecting it. So, but outdoor levels are totally dependent on wind speed. So if there's any wind at night, you'll see no significant accumulation. If there's no wind during the day, which is rare, because as soon as the sun comes, it heats the earth. That warming of the earth causes the air to start moving, and that's where you see a sailor suddenly, hey, it's daytime, and we're getting we get a nice sailing day, and then suddenly the sun starts going down, and suddenly you're rowing the sailboat back to shore. Okay, so it's always a factor of that, but that's one of the things about the eco trackers. You can put them outdoors, and you don't have to put it, where it's in the rain. You can put it in your porch if you have an open porch outside. Plug it in and see what kind of rise you get at night in some of your locations, and you'll be fascinated to see that. I also want to point out with that, that we've measured radon at the study house we're doing. We measured it at a 2-foot level and at a 10-foot level above grade. And there was almost no difference at night in the radon concentrations. So when it went to 10, 15 picocuries, both those monitors, even 10 feet in the air, was reading 15 picocuries or so.
Wow.
So as it fills up the outdoors, it is filling up the outdoors, so to speak. And it takes a while for it. Usually like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. is when you'll start to see typically your highest peaks.
That's fun.
Awesome.
All right.
I have one question here I want to address because it's about a problem that could come up, and it's from Bert Hall, and he says, so how do you start a test with the Radon Pro in a remote location where you just absolutely have no cell phone service and the app will not function? So David may have a better idea for this, but what I've heard done is if you're in one of those rare remote locations where you can't get service, if you can just go back to, wherever you can get, service on your phone, where you can connect to the device via Bluetooth, then you can go ahead and set it on a 12-hour delay. And then you can go ahead and start the test and wherever you are, and then you can take it to the property and deploy it. And you just need to make sure you've allowed for that, additional time before you go pick it up.
Do you need on the Radon Pro, do you need a Wi-Fi, or can you start a test just on Bluetooth?
Bluetooth? So we found very few people have a problem with their Bluetooth connection. You don't need Wi-Fi at all. So as long as you can connect to it via your Bluetooth, then you're fine. And most of the time that works even in remote locations. But David, maybe you've got a better answer to that.
I don't know if it's better, but it's different. A lot of people, when they go to these remote locations, they know that they're going to go ahead of time. So one way that we recommend using it is by just opening the app and making sure that it's working on your phone before you head into this remote location. As long as the app is open, the Radon Eye will connect to your phone via Bluetooth. So
yeah.
So you can start a test and with a delay. You could also just open it where there is cellular network, and then continue on as it is, because the app itself needs data to be able to open the app. But once it's open, all it needs is Bluetooth to connect to the Radon Eye.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you don't have to have the Wi-Fi connection or anything or cellular connection for the Bluetooth to work. If you have the app already open, then it'll work whether you have cellular, cell phone reception or not.
But to open the app, you must have cell connection.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you have to know that ahead of time. Oh, no cell connection. You're gonna have to drive back up to the mountain.
You may have to, drive down the road a little bit till you get it, and then go ahead and open it up. But if you can anticipate you're going to an area that is so remote that you don't have it, then do what David said. And it seems to work pretty well. Fortunately, that's not a huge problem, but that's the way people have handled it. David, did you have we're over 8 o'clock, and I see a couple of people have dropped off, but I figured before we go, I'm not going to keep Bill any longer than maybe one last question. And then I do have one thing I want to show everybody for a little special deal you can get for joining us tonight. But Bill,
why don't you show that first, and then while we're
all right, let me show you the special deal since David says we need to get that going here. So special deal. If you can see this right now. So if you go into the Ecosense website and put in the code Dallas10OFF, you can get 10% off, or $99.90. Just say $100 off that Eco Tracker. All right. And if you want to get the Radon Eye Pro for $700, then you can go ahead and put in save You can save 95 with the promo code you see here, and you can get a deal there as well. So we encourage you. We've got, if you're interested in one of our other products, please give me a call. But this is good until midnight tonight. But we want to make sure that we reward you for joining us tonight. We really do appreciate your attending and your time. So let's wrap up with one more question, David.
All right, so let's answer Jesse Green's question. He's a really good friend of ours here at Ecosense. So
Hi,
yeah,
Jesse.
he asked.
This is going to be a tricky one.
Yeah. Well, he asked, are you familiar with Colin Dumas and his approach to doing PFE? And Colin is a mitigator in Canada, if I'm correct.
Right. I'm not 100% familiar with his technique, no. So if maybe he can get me offline and we can catch that.
You want to open the mic up? Can you open the mic up, or do I need to do that for Jesse?
I think you need to do that. Yeah.
Oh boy, let me see if I can find him here. Where are you, Jesse? Jesse is.
I know he uses the Fantech unit, their diagnostic instrument for making those measurements, and then has a way of doing his calculations on a spreadsheet. I mean, I've seen what he's relayed that to me, but I don't have it on the top of my head of like, oh, this is his technique. And could this be applied by a regular someone else? They would probably need the same equipment that he has. You'd have to buy the diagnostic package that's available from them.
Yeah.
From Fantech.
Jesse, did I get your mic open or not?
I think so.
Okay, go ahead. Go for it.
Hey, guys.
Jesse.
Hi, Jesse.
Hello. So, Bill, I just learned about Colin Dumas because I watched his presentation that he gave at the symposium. I just watched it online. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy's got so many answers that I've had questions to. So I found he's got a ton of continued ed on his website, like recorded videos you can watch.
Right.
And he talks about the Canadian guidance to reducing radon or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it's called.
Yeah, the Canadian guidance is very good.
It is.
So,
Yeah. So
that was written by Arthur Scott originally.
Oh, yeah, I think that's what Colin said. But he's talking about your minimum target pressure field extension that you want, target pressure. And
Yeah.
there's a temperature correction factor. So
Correct.
your target PFE in that far test hole, your weak test hole, is going to change based on the temperature outside. And there's a
Correct.
formula you can do a calculation and figure out, hey, I've got 4 pascals of positive pressure right now. It's 0 degrees out, and I need to get, 0.5 pascals negative in that test hole. So it was just
Right.
It was really awesome. I hope that it proves out, because I've always wondered, what is the number I'm shooting for? Is it 3 pascals negative in the summer, in the winter? Is it 5 pascals negative in the summer? Which is something I've heard. I think it's vapor intrusion is where those numbers came from. But
yeah, get a copy of the Canadian mitigation recommendations, their handout, and that has Arthur Scott's original calculations on doing that, which includes those temperature modifications for it. Colin may have come up with some additional, or maybe he fine-tuned it because of all the work he does. And he's looking for just the slightest 1 Pascal plus whatever temperature correction as the necessary minimum vacuum he needs underneath the floor. I think it was around 1 Pascal. Maybe it was even less than 1 Pascal. So
yeah. So thanks for asking that, Jesse. For all of you mitigators who are left on the call here, I can't stress enough that, appreciate you being here and listening to Bill and Jesse's another one who firmly believes in data when it comes to installing mitigation systems and doing the necessary steps to make sure you do a good job. So we're all about helping those who have been doing the poke and hope approach to doing something a little more sophisticated, and we've got the tools, or at least some of the tools that can help you do that. And with expertise from Bill and Jesse and others, then we always like to share that wherever we can. Bill, I can't thank you enough for being here with us tonight. If we didn't get to your question, then please feel free to email me or David. My email is djones@ecosense.io. And we will get to your get an answer for you if we didn't get to it tonight.
And you can certainly forward any of those questions on to me if you want to pass them on, and I'll
Absolutely. I fully intend it.
answer
If it's
comments
something
on.
I don't feel comfortable with, I'm going to pass it right over to Mr. Bill. So, David,
Yeah, and
do you
I
have
also want to
anything
point
else?
out that on my web,
Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
my website has a lot of good information on it. If people are not familiar with it, you can just about get to it by doing Bill Radon on Google, but it's my company initials, WPB radon.com. And there's lots of videos. There's some, not so much videos, but there's some slideshows on there. They're all my fan testing. There's just a lot of good information, a lot of my research papers. So all of that's available on my website anytime they want to come over and take a look at that. And we get a lot of hits on that. I get about 150 hits a day coming over to
Wow.
just check that out, that website.
Well, there you go. All right.
Right.
David, do you have anything you want to say to close?
Nope. Just, I guess Daisy asked to send your email in the chat. Unfortunately, the chat is disabled, but again, Dallas's email is djones@ecosense.io. And Bill, what is your email again once more?
It's WM Brodhead, BRODHEAD @gmail.com. WM Brodhead @gmail.com.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I have nothing else. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Yeah. So on behalf of everybody at Ecosense and Bill, and we appreciate your attending, and stay tuned. We've got more webinars coming up even this month, and we'll have Bill back again sometime in a few months. So we'll keep you posted. Thanks for
All right.
joining us.
Yep. You're welcome, Dallas. Yep, David.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.